In the year 2247, Earth was dying. The once blue skies were now choked with ash, and the oceans had turned into lifeless wastelands. Decades of war, pollution, and greed had left the planet on the edge of total collapse. Billions of people were gone, either dead or struggling to survive in crumbling cities. Food was scarce, clean water was even scarcer, and hope was almost non-existent. Humanity needed a miracle, or at least a desperate plan. Captain Lucas Grayson stood on the bridge of the starship Eclipse *, staring out at the endless void of space. He wasn't a hero. He was just a man trying to do his job. But lately, his job felt more like a death sentence. The Eclipse * was one of the last functioning ships, tasked with finding help from an alien species rumored to have unimaginable power. It was a long shot, but it was all they had left. Behind him, Alina Martinez worked quietly at her station. She was the ship's chief engineer, and without her, the Eclipse * wouldn't have made it this far. Her hands moved quickly over the controls as she monitored the ship's systems. Despite her calm exterior, she was worried. They were running low on fuel, and the crew was exhausted. Every day brought new challenges, and every decision felt heavier than the last. Daniel Hayes sat nearby, studying data on his tablet. As the ship's biologist, he spent most of his time analyzing samples from distant planets, searching for anything that might help Earth. But so far, nothing had worked. His frustration was evident in the way he tapped his pen against the screen. "We're running out of options," he muttered under his breath. Rachel Monroe, the communications officer, glanced up from her station. She had been listening to static for hours, hoping to catch some sign of intelligent life. Her headset pressed tightly against her ears. She adjusted the dials again and again. "There has to be someone out there," she said softly. Her voice carried a mix of determination and desperation. If anyone could find a signal, it was Rachel. She had a knack for picking up faint transmissions, even when everyone else gave up. The mood aboard the Eclipse * was heavy. Everyone knew what was at stake. Failure meant the end, not just for them, but for all of humanity. Yet, despite the weight of their mission, they kept going. They had no choice. Lucas turned away from the window and addressed the crew. "We've come too far to give up now," he said firmly. "If there's even a small chance we can find help, we owe it to Earth to try." His words didn't erase the fear or uncertainty, but they reminded the crew why they were here. Each of them had lost something or someone because of Earth's downfall. This mission wasn't just about survival. It was personal. Hours passed, and the tension grew thicker. Then, just as Rachel was about to call it quits for the day, she heard something. Faint, distorted, but unmistakably artificial. Her heart raced as she fine-tuned the signal. "I got something," she exclaimed, drawing everyone's attention. "What is it?" Lucas asked, stepping closer. "I don't know yet," Rachel admitted, "but it's coming from a system we haven't explored before. It's not human. That much I'm sure of." Alina frowned. "Are you saying it's alien?" "It's possible," Daniel chimed in. "If it's intelligent, we need to check it out." Lucas hesitated. Approaching an unknown alien species was risky, especially given their current state. But staying put wasn't an option either. "Set a course," he finally ordered. "Let's see who, or what, we're dealing with." As the Eclipse * changed direction, the crew prepared for the unknown. None of them knew what lay ahead, but they all shared one thing in common: a glimmer of hope. It was fragile, fleeting, and maybe even foolish, but it was enough to keep them moving forward. For now, that was all they needed. As the Eclipse * approached the source of the mysterious signal, the crew grew quieter. The hum of the ship's engines filled the silence, but it did little to ease their nerves. None of them had ever encountered an alien species before, and the uncertainty weighed heavily on their minds. Was this a friendly race, or were they walking into a trap? Rachel Monroe was the first to break the tension. She adjusted her headset again and focused on the transmission. It wasn't clear or structured like human communication. It was more like pulses and tones, repeating in patterns that seemed deliberate. "It's intelligent," she said finally, her voice steady despite her racing thoughts. "Whatever is sending this knows we're here." Daniel Hayes leaned over her shoulder, studying the data streaming across her screen. His eyes narrowed as he analyzed the patterns. "These sequences, they're almost mathematical," he observed. "It's like they're trying to communicate through numbers." He pointed to a series of recurring signals. "Look at this. These intervals are too precise to be random." Lucas Grayson listened intently, his arms crossed over his chest. "Can you respond?" he asked Rachel. She nodded and began entering commands into her console. Using the same pattern structure, she sent a simple message back. "We come in peace." The seconds that followed felt like hours as the crew waited for a reply. Finally, the signal shifted. It was fainter now, but unmistakably different. "They answered," Rachel whispered, her fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted the controls. "I think they're telling us where to go." Elena Martinez frowned from her station. "This could be dangerous," she warned. "What if it's a lure? We don't know what kind of species we're dealing with." "We don't have much of a choice," Lucas reminded her. "If they can help us save Earth, we have to take the risk." With no other options, the crew agreed to follow the signal. It led them to a planet hidden within a dense nebula, its surface shimmering with strange colors under the light of 3 suns. The sight was breathtaking, but also unnerving. The planet looked both beautiful and alien, completely unlike anything they'd seen before. "Welcome to whatever this place is," Daniel muttered as the Eclipse entered orbit. He scanned the planet's surface, searching for signs of life. What he found shocked him. "There are structures down there," he announced. "Not natural formations, buildings. They look crystalline, almost like glass." Lucas studied the images on the main screen. The structures were massive, towering high above the landscape. Some glowed faintly, while others reflected the sunlight in dazzling bursts. "Prepare the landing pods," he ordered. "We'll investigate on foot." The team suited up quickly, each member carrying essential tools and weapons. As they descended toward the planet's surface, the air outside became thick with swirling particles. When the pods touched down, the crew stepped out cautiously, their boots crunching against a rocky terrain covered in fine dust. The environment was eerily quiet. No wind, no animals, nothing to suggest life existed here. Yet the crystalline buildings loomed ahead, their surfaces shimmering faintly in the dim light. Rachel walked ahead, her scanner held tightly in front of her. "The signal's stronger now," she reported. "It's coming from one of those structures." Before they could move closer, something caught Daniel's eye. Embedded in the ground was a strange object, a pulsating orb about the size of a basketball. Its surface was smooth and cool to the touch, glowing faintly with an inner light. "What is this thing?" he wondered aloud, crouching down to examine it. When he reached out to touch it, the orb reacted instantly. It projected holographic symbols into the air, floating shapes that twisted and shifted in complex patterns. Rachel gasped. "It's some kind of language," she said, "maybe even a form of communication." Elena stepped forward, her brow furrowed. "Be careful," she warned. "We don't know what this thing does." But Daniel couldn't resist. He tapped one of the symbols experimentally, and the projection changed, forming new shapes. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. In the distance, shadows moved between the crystalline towers. "They know we're here," Lucas said grimly, gripping his weapon tightly. "Let's hope they're willing to talk." The trembling ground settled, but the sense of unease among the crew only grew stronger. Shadows moved between the crystalline towers in the distance, shifting and vanishing as if they were alive. Rachel Monroe kept her eyes fixed on the horizon, her heart pounding. She wasn't sure what she expected to see. Monsters. Machines. Something else entirely. Whatever it was, it didn't feel friendly. "We need to stay alert," Lucas Grayson said, his voice low but firm. He scanned the area, his weapon ready in his hands. Elena, keep an eye on the orb. Daniel, see if you can figure out what those symbols mean. Rachel, stay close and let me know if you pick up anything new. Elena Martinez knelt beside the glowing orb, her fingers hovering over its surface. The holographic symbols continued to shift and change, reacting to even the slightest movement around it. This thing, it's like a key, she murmured, more to herself than to the others. Maybe it unlocks something, or someone. Daniel Hayes leaned closer, studying the patterns with intense focus. These symbols aren't random, he said after a moment. They're organized, like a code. If I can map their sequence, maybe we can use it to communicate. As Daniel worked, Rachel adjusted her headset, trying to pick up any additional signals. The earlier transmission had gone silent, leaving an unsettling void. I'm not getting anything now, she admitted. It's like they're waiting for us to make the next move. Lucas glanced toward the shadows moving in the distance. Let's not keep them waiting too long, he said. We came here for answers, and we're not leaving until we get them. Taking a deep breath, Lucas stepped forward, raising one hand in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. We mean no harm, he called out, his voice echoing across the barren landscape. For a moment, there was no response. Then, slowly, figures began to emerge from the shadows. They were tall, much taller than humans, with slender frames and translucent skin that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Their eyes glowed softly, casting an otherworldly aura around them. They moved with fluid grace, each step deliberate and unhurried. Despite their beauty, there was something unnerving about them, as if they were observing every detail of the humans before them. Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. Are they alive? She whispered, unsure if anyone heard her. They're definitely intelligent, Daniel replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Look at how they're watching us. One of the beings stepped forward, standing slightly ahead of the others. It tilted its head, studying the crew with an expression that was impossible to read. Then, without warning, it reached out a long, delicate hand toward the orb. The orb reacted instantly, glowing brighter and projecting a series of new symbols into the air. This time, the symbols formed a pattern that seemed to pulse rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Rachel gasped as she realized what was happening. It's talking to us, she said, or trying to. Daniel nodded, his eyes wide with excitement. The orb is translating. It's bridging the gap between their language and ours. Using the orb as a guide, Rachel began experimenting with responses. She mimicked one of the symbol patterns, and the alien leader paused, tilting its head again. After a moment, it responded by altering the projection. The process was slow and awkward, but progress was being made. They call themselves the Valeth, Rachel explained after several tense minutes. They've been watching us since we arrived. They know why we're here. Lucas exchanged a glance with Elena. Do they know about Earth? Rachel hesitated before nodding. Yes, and they don't think much of us. What does that mean? Elena asked sharply. It means they see us as reckless, Rachel said quietly. They think we've damaged our planet beyond repair because of our greed and carelessness. The weight of the aliens' judgment hung heavy in the air. Lucas clenched his jaw, forcing himself to remain calm. Tell them we're here to learn, he instructed Rachel. We want to fix what we've done, if they'll help us. Rachel relayed the message through the orb, and the Valeth leader considered it carefully. Finally, it gestured for the humans to follow. As the group moved toward the crystalline towers, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far bigger and far more dangerous than they could imagine. The Valeth led the crew deeper into the crystalline city, their glowing forms casting faint light on the strange, shimmering structures around them. The air was cool and silent, save for the soft hum of energy that seemed to pulse through the towers themselves. Rachel Monroe stayed close to Lucas Grayson, her eyes darting nervously between the aliens and their surroundings. Every step felt like walking into the unknown, and the further they went, the more uneasy she became. The streets, or what passed for streets, were smooth and flawless, as if carved from a single piece of glass. There were no vehicles, no signs of machinery, nothing to suggest how the Valeth lived or worked. It was as though the entire city existed in perfect harmony with itself, untouched by time or decay. Daniel Hayes couldn't help but marvel at the craftsmanship. "This is incredible," he muttered under his breath. "Everything here is so precise." Elena Martinez wasn't as impressed. "It's beautiful, sure," she said, her tone clipped. "But beauty doesn't keep people alive. Let's focus on why we're here." Lucas nodded in agreement. He kept his attention on the Valeth leader, who moved ahead of them with an air of calm authority. Its movements were deliberate, almost hypnotic, and it never once looked back to check if the humans were following. They had no choice but to trust that the alien knew where it was going. After what felt like hours, the group arrived at a massive structure at the heart of the city. Unlike the other buildings, this one pulsed with a faint, rhythmic glow, as if it were alive. The Valeth leader stopped at the entrance and turned to face them. Through the orb, Rachel translated its message. "This is the Hall of Trials. If you seek our help, you must prove yourselves worthy." "Worthy?" Elena repeated, her voice rising slightly. "What does that even mean?" Rachel hesitated before responding. "They say only those who can survive their test deserve their knowledge. If we fail, we won't leave this place." Lucas clenched his fists, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "We didn't come all this way to be tested like lab rats," he snapped. "Earth is dying. Millions of lives depend on us. You can't just turn us away." The Valeth leader tilted its head, its glowing eyes unblinking. When Rachel translated its reply, her voice trembled. "They don't care about Earth. To them, we're reckless children who've destroyed our home. Passing their trial is the only way to earn their respect and their help." Daniel stepped forward, his curiosity outweighing his fear. "What kind of trial are we talking about?" The alien gestured toward the entrance, and the doors slid open silently, revealing a dark, endless corridor within. Rachel relayed the explanation. "It's a labyrinth, a test of survival, intelligence, and unity. Only those who work together will make it out alive." Lucas exchanged a glance with his crew. None of them liked the idea of stepping into a deadly maze, but they didn't have much of a choice. Turning back meant giving up on Earth, and that wasn't an option. "All right," Lucas said finally, his voice firm despite the knot of dread in his stomach. "Let's do this. Stick together, watch each other's backs, and remember why we're here." With that, the crew followed the Valeth leader inside. The doors closed behind them with a soft hiss, plunging the group into near darkness. The walls of the labyrinth glowed faintly, casting eerie shadows on the floor. The air grew colder, and a low hum filled the space, vibrating in their chests. "This place gives me the creeps," Elena muttered, clutching her toolkit tightly. "Feels like it's alive." "It probably is," Daniel replied, his voice tinged with awe. He ran his hand along the wall, feeling the faint pulse of energy beneath his fingers. "This isn't just a maze, it's a living system. Everything here reacts to us." As they ventured deeper, the labyrinth began to shift. Walls moved silently, rearranging themselves to block paths and create new ones. Strange noises echoed through the corridors, soft clicks, distant whispers, and the occasional scrape of something moving just out of sight. Rachel froze, her breath catching in her throat. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her eyes wide. "Hear what?" Lucas asked, turning to look at her. Before she could answer, a shadow darted past them, too fast to see clearly. Whatever it wasn't human. The crew instinctively drew closer together, their weapons raised and their hearts pounding. "This is it," Lucas said grimly. "The trial has begun." The labyrinth was alive, and it didn't like intruders. The walls continued to shift unpredictably, forcing the crew to adapt quickly or risk being trapped. Shadows darted in the corners of their vision, always just out of reach. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if the maze itself was testing their resolve. Lucas Grayson led the group, his weapon drawn, and his eyes scanning every direction. "Stay close," he ordered, his voice firm but calm. "We don't know what's out there, but we can't afford to split up." Elena Martinez adjusted the settings on her wrist scanner, trying to map the ever-changing corridors. "This thing isn't working," she muttered, frustration evident in her tone. "The walls keep moving too fast for me to track them." "We'll have to rely on instinct," then Lucas replied. He glanced at Rachel Monroe, who was clutching the orb tightly. "Can that thing help us? Maybe show us a safe path?" Rachel hesitated before shaking her head. "It's not designed for navigation. It's more of a communication tool, but I'll try." She held the orb up, watching as its glow dimmed slightly. The symbols flickered, forming patterns that seemed to point ahead. "I think it's telling us to keep moving forward." Daniel Hayes nodded, though his face was pale. "Forward it is," he said, gripping his sample kit like a shield. "Just don't ask me to pet any alien creatures we find along the way." No sooner had he spoken than a low growl echoed through the corridor. The sound sent chills down everyone's spines. They froze, their eyes darting toward the darkness ahead. Something was coming. "Get ready," Lucas whispered, raising his weapon. The others followed suit, forming a tight circle as they prepared for whatever lurked in the shadows. A moment later, a creature emerged. It was unlike anything they'd seen before, part insect, part machine, with razor-sharp limbs and glowing red eyes. It moved with terrifying speed, scuttling sideways along the wall before dropping to the floor. Its gaze locked onto the group, and it let out another guttural growl. "Don't shoot unless you have to," Lucas warned, his voice steady despite the tension. "We don't know how many of these things are here." The creature lunged suddenly, its claws slicing through the air where Daniel had been standing moments earlier. Elena reacted instantly, using her toolkit to create a small electromagnetic pulse. The device crackled to life, sending a wave of energy through the corridor. The creature shrieked and recoiled, giving the group a chance to retreat. "Good thinking," Lucas said to Elena as they backed away. "But we need a better plan. These things are fast, and we're outnumbered." Rachel stepped forward, holding the orb high. "Maybe this will distract them," she suggested. The orb pulsed brighter, projecting a series of calming symbols into the air. To everyone's surprise, the creature paused, tilting its head as if studying the light. For a brief moment, it seemed confused, or even mesmerized. "Keep moving," Lucas urged, taking advantage of the distraction. "We can't count on that trick working forever." As they pressed on, the labyrinth grew more hostile. The temperature dropped sharply, and icy mist began to fill the corridors, making it harder to see. Strange whispers echoed around them, distorted voices that sounded almost human. Rachel shivered, clutching the orb tighter. "Do you hear that?" she asked softly. "It's like memories." Daniel frowned, listening closely. "Memories? What do you mean?" "It's hard to explain," Rachel admitted, "but it feels like the maze is showing us things we've tried to forget." Lucas shot her a concerned look. "Focus, Rachel. Whatever it's doing, don't let it get inside your head." Elena noticed something else, a faint trail of heat signatures on her scanner. "There's something following us," she said, her voice tense. "Multiple somethings." Before anyone could respond, the walls shifted again, trapping them in a narrow chamber. The growls returned, louder this time, accompanied by the skittering of claws against the floor. The creatures were closing in. "We need a way out now," Lucas said, his eyes scanning the room desperately. Then he spotted it, a faint crack in the ceiling, just wide enough for someone to climb through. "Up there. Move." One by one, the crew scrambled up, using each other's shoulders to boost themselves higher. As the last of them pulled themselves into the next corridor, the creatures slammed into the walls below, their frustrated cries echoing behind them. For now, they were safe, but only just. Lucas looked at his exhausted team, knowing the worst was yet to come. "We're halfway there," he said, trying to sound encouraging. "We just have to keep going." No one spoke. They all knew what was at stake and what might lie ahead. The corridor above was darker and colder than the one they had just escaped. The crew moved cautiously, their breaths visible in the freezing air. Each step felt heavier now, not just from exhaustion, but from the weight of what they had seen and what might still lie ahead. The labyrinth wasn't just a physical challenge. It was testing their minds, their unity, and their will to survive. Daniel Hayes stumbled slightly, his legs trembling from fatigue. "How much farther do we have to go?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He didn't expect an answer, and he didn't get one. No one knew how deep this maze went or what awaited them at its end. Rachel Monroe held the orb close, its faint glow providing the only light in the oppressive darkness. She could still hear the whispers, soft, fragmented voices that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. They spoke of past failures, regrets, and fears, each word designed to make her doubt herself. She clenched her jaw, trying to shut them out. "It's trying to break us," she said finally, her voice shaky but determined. "Don't listen to it." Lucas Grayson glanced back at her, his expression grim. "Stay focused," he reminded her. "This place feeds on fear. If we let it get inside our heads, we're done for." Alina Martinez adjusted her toolkit, making sure everything was secure. Her hands were steady, but her mind raced with thoughts of what might come next. She hated feeling powerless, and this maze made her feel exactly that. Still, she forced herself to think logically. "We need to find a pattern," she said. "These walls keep moving, but there has to be some kind of system. If we can figure it out, we might be able to predict where the exits are. Or we could just keep running into dead ends," Daniel muttered under his breath. "Because that's been working so well for us." Despite the sarcasm, Alina ignored him and began analyzing the walls more closely. She noticed faint lines etched into the surface, almost invisible unless you looked carefully. "These marks, they're like coordinates," she realized. "They show where the walls will shift next." Lucas nodded approvingly. "Good work. Let's use that to stay ahead of this thing." But the maze wasn't done with them yet. As they followed Alina's guidance, the temperature dropped even further, and the air grew thick with a strange metallic scent. Then, without warning, the floor beneath them began to vibrate. Cracks spread across its surface, glowing faintly as if molten energy coursed beneath it. "Move," Lucas shouted, pushing the group forward. They ran as fast as their tired bodies would allow, dodging falling debris and leaping over widening gaps. Just as they reached what seemed like solid ground, the section they had been standing on collapsed into a fiery abyss below. Panting and shaken, the crew huddled together, staring at the chasm behind them. "That was too close," Rachel said, her voice trembling. "What else does this place have in store for us?" No one answered. They all knew the trials weren't random. They were designed to push them to their limits. And they weren't just physical obstacles. The labyrinth was targeting their emotions, forcing them to confront things they'd rather forget. Daniel sat down heavily, his face pale. "I don't know how much more of this I can take," he admitted. "Every step feels like another test, another way for this thing to tear us apart." Alina knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You're stronger than you think," she said firmly. "We all are. We've made it this far because we're working together. That's what matters." Lucas nodded in agreement. She's right. This maze isn't just about survival. It's about trust. If we fall apart now, we lose everything. Rachel stood up, holding the orb higher. Its light pulsed gently, as if responding to her determination. "Let's keep going," she said. "For Earth, for everyone counting on us. With renewed resolve, the crew pressed forward, following Elena's readings and trusting each other to navigate the shifting maze. But as they turned a corner, they found themselves face to face with a massive door, glowing with intricate patterns that shifted and changed like liquid fire. In the center was a symbol none of them recognized, a swirling emblem that seemed to pulse with life. "This is it," Lucas said quietly. "The final trial." The door opened slowly, revealing a chamber bathed in soft, golden light. Inside, a pedestal stood in the middle of the room, holding a crystal shard that glowed brighter than anything they'd seen before. It was beautiful, but also intimidating. "What do we do now?" Rachel asked, her voice barely audible. Lucas stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the shard. "We finish this." The golden light of the chamber bathed the crew in warmth, a stark contrast to the cold, oppressive corridors they had just escaped. But the sense of relief was fleeting. The crystal shard on the pedestal pulsed with an energy that felt almost alive, as if it were watching them, waiting for something. Lucas Grayson approached cautiously, his boots making soft echoes against the smooth floor. He stopped a few feet from the pedestal, studying the shard carefully. It wasn't just a piece of rock. It radiated power, a kind of energy that seemed both beautiful and dangerous. "This must be the key," he said quietly, his voice steady but tinged with unease. "The final test." Rachel Monroe stepped forward, clutching the orb tightly. Its glow dimmed slightly, as if hesitant to approach the shard. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Do we take it? Touch it?" Elena Martinez shook her head. "Not yet. Look at the patterns around it." She pointed to the swirling designs etched into the pedestal. They shifted slowly, almost hypnotically, forming shapes that resembled the symbols they had seen earlier in the maze. "It's another puzzle. We have to solve it before we can claim the shard." Daniel Hayes knelt beside the pedestal, examining the patterns closely. His hands hovered over the surface, but he didn't touch anything. "These aren't random," he observed. "They're connected to the trials we faced so far. The creatures, the whispers, the collapsing floors. This is testing whether we've learned anything." Lucas frowned. "Learned what?" "How to survive." "No," Daniel replied. "How to work together. How to trust each other. That's what this whole maze has been about." As if on cue, the chamber began to change. The walls shimmered, and images appeared, holograms of their journey through the labyrinth. They saw themselves battling the insect-like creatures, navigating the shifting walls, and confronting their own fears. Each scene played out in vivid detail, highlighting moments of doubt, anger, and unity. Rachel gasped as one image showed her standing alone, tears streaming down her face as she fought off the whispers. Another depicted Elena shouting at Lucas during a heated argument. Even Daniel was shown, his face pale with fear as he hesitated to act. "This isn't just a test," Rachel whispered. "It's showing us our weaknesses." Lucas clenched his fists, his jaw tight. "It's trying to make us turn on each other," he said firmly. "But it won't work. We've come too far to let this break us." Elena nodded, stepping closer to the group. "He's right. Every challenge we faced, we overcame because we stuck together. That's how we'll pass this trial, too." Daniel stood up, his expression resolute. "Then let's figure this out, together." The crew gathered around the pedestal, focusing on the shifting symbols. One by one, they began to notice connections between the patterns and their experiences in the maze. Rachel traced a swirling line with her finger. "This part here, it matches the rhythm of the whispers. They were trying to confuse us, but we pushed through." "And this," Elena added, pointing to another section, "looks like the heat signatures I used to predict the wall movements. It's reminding us to use what we've learned." Lucas studied the final pattern, a jagged, chaotic design that seemed to pulse faster than the others. "This must represent the creatures," he said. "They attacked us when we were divided, but we fought back as a team." As they pieced the puzzle together, the shard began to glow brighter, responding to their understanding. Slowly, the patterns aligned, forming a single unified symbol. The pedestal hummed softly, and the shard lifted slightly, hovering above its base. "It's working," Rachel said, her voice filled with awe. "We're solving it." But just as the shard reached its highest point, the chamber trembled. The holograms vanished, replaced by a deep, resonant voice that echoed through the room. Through the orb, Rachel translated the message. "You have proven your strength, but now you must prove your worth." Before anyone could react, the pedestal sank into the floor, leaving the shard suspended in midair. Around them, the walls shifted again, creating a circular platform. From the shadows emerged 4 figures, the Veilith, their glowing eyes fixed on the humans, their expressions unreadable. One of them stepped forward, its voice calm but commanding. Rachel translated, "Take the shard. But know this, it will show you the truth, not just about yourselves, but about your species. Are you ready to face it?" The crew exchanged uneasy glances. None of them knew what the shard would reveal, but they all understood the stakes. If they refused, the trial would end in failure, and Earth would be lost. Lucas stepped forward, his hand reaching for the shard. "We're ready," he said, his voice firm despite the uncertainty gnawing at him. As his fingers brushed the shard, a surge of energy coursed through the chamber, enveloping the crew in blinding light. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, one by one, they began to see visions, not of the maze, but of Earth. The wars, the pollution, the suffering, they witnessed it all, as if reliving humanity's darkest moments. Rachel fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Is this what we are?" she whispered. Elena clenched her fists, her anger bubbling to the surface. "No, this isn't who we have to be." Lucas stood tall, his voice cutting through the tension. "It's who we were, but we can change. That's why we're here." The Veilith watched silently, their glowing eyes unreadable. Finally, one of them spoke, its tone softer this time. Rachel translated, "You have faced your truth. Now, prove you are worthy of our gift." The shard pulsed once more, and the visions faded. The crew stood together, battered but unbroken, ready to face whatever came next. The shard's glow dimmed, leaving the chamber bathed in a soft, ambient light. The Veilith remained still, their glowing eyes fixed on the humans as if waiting for something more. The crew stood together, their breathing heavy but steady. They had faced their darkest truths and survived. But the trial wasn't over yet. Lucas Grayson tightened his grip on the shard, its surface cool and smooth against his palm. He could feel its energy, a faint hum that seemed to resonate with his very core. "What now?" he asked aloud, his voice echoing slightly in the chamber. Through the orb, Rachel Monroe translated the Veilith's response. "The final test is not of strength or unity. It is of purpose. You must decide what you are willing to sacrifice for your world." "Sacrifice," Elena Martinez repeated, her voice sharp with unease. "What does that mean?" The Veilith leader gestured toward the shard. As it did, the chamber shifted again, the walls dissolving into a series of holographic projections. Each image depicted a different scenario, scenes of Earth's possible future. In one, lush green forests stretched across continents, cities rebuilt with clean energy, and humanity thriving in harmony. In another, the planet was barren, its skies choked with ash, its oceans empty and lifeless. Rachel gasped, clutching the orb tightly. "These are choices," she whispered. "They're showing us what could happen if we succeed or fail." Daniel Hayes stepped closer, his brow furrowed as he studied the projections. "It's not just about saving Earth," he said slowly. "It's about deciding what kind of world we want to create, and what we're willing to give up to make it happen." Lucas nodded, his expression grim. "Every choice has a cost. That's what they're telling us." The Veilith leader spoke again, its voice calm but firm. Rachel translated, "The shard holds the power to heal your planet, But only if you prove you understand the weight of that power. Use it wisely, or it will destroy you. Alina crossed her arms, her frustration evident. How do we prove anything? What do they want from us? They want us to choose, Lucas replied. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone back home. We have to show them we're ready to take responsibility for our actions. The holograms shifted again, this time focusing on each member of the crew. One by one, they were shown visions of their own lives, their mistakes, their regrets, and the sacrifices they had already made. For Lucas, it was the memory of losing his younger brother in a resource war, a conflict fueled by greed and desperation. For Rachel, it was the guilt of abandoning her family to join the mission, leaving them behind on a dying planet. Alina saw herself turning down opportunities to help others because she was too focused on survival. Daniel relived moments of hesitation, times when he chose caution over action, letting fear dictate his decisions. These aren't just memories, Rachel murmured, tears streaming down her face. They're lessons. They're showing us what we've lost, and what we can still save. Lucas turned to his crew, his voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside him. We've all made mistakes. We've all done things we regret. But that's why we're here, to make things right, to give Earth a second chance. Alina wiped her eyes, nodding slowly. You're right. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about everyone who's counting on us. Daniel took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. If we're going to use this power, we need to promise, to ourselves and to Earth, that we won't repeat the same mistakes. We'll build something better. Rachel held the orb close, its light flickering gently. Then let's do it. Let's show them we're worthy. With renewed determination, the crew gathered around Lucas. Together, they raised the shard high, its energy pulsing brighter as they channeled their collective resolve. The Valeth watched silently, their expressions unreadable, as the chamber filled with a warm golden light. When the light faded, the shard was gone, absorbed into the shard's core. The Valeth leader stepped forward, its voice softer now. Through the orb, Rachel translated, "You have passed the final trial. The power to heal your world is yours. But remember, it comes with great responsibility." Lucas bowed his head, his voice filled with quiet gratitude. "Thank you. We won't forget." As the Valeth turned and began to leave, the chamber dissolved around them, replaced by the familiar sight of the crystalline city. The labyrinth was gone, and with it, the weight of the trials they had endured. But the lessons remained, etched into their hearts. "We did it," Rachel said softly, her voice trembling with relief. "Now, we go home." Lucas nodded, looking at his crew. "Let's finish what we started." The journey back to the Eclipse felt surreal, as if the weight of their mission had finally lifted. The crew moved through the crystalline city in silence, their steps lighter but their minds heavy with the responsibility they now carried. The Valeth had granted them the power to heal Earth, but it came with a warning that echoed in their thoughts. Use it wisely, or it will destroy you. Lucas Grayson led the group, his grip firm on the small device given to them by the Valeth. It was no larger than a handheld tool, yet it contained the energy of the shard, a force capable of reversing decades of ecological damage. He glanced at his crew, each of them lost in their own reflections. They had faced death, fear, and doubt, but they had also found strength in each other. Rachel Monroe clutched the orb tightly, her fingers tracing its surface absent-mindedly. The whispers of the labyrinth were gone, replaced by a strange calm. She thought about the visions she had seen, the guilt of leaving her family behind, the pain of Earth's suffering, and how they had shaped her understanding of what needed to be done. "We're not just bringing back technology," she said softly, breaking the silence. "We're bringing back hope." Alina Martinez nodded, though her expression remained guarded. "Hope is fragile," she replied. "It'll take more than this device to fix everything. People have to change too. If they don't, none of this will matter." Daniel Hayes sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. I know, he admitted, but maybe this is the push humanity needs. Maybe seeing Earth begin to heal will remind people what's at stake. As they approached the landing pods, the crystalline towers seemed to shimmer faintly, almost as if bidding them farewell. The Valith were nowhere to be seen, but their presence lingered in the air, an unspoken reminder of the trust placed in these four humans. Lucas stopped for a moment, looking back at the alien city. "We owe them more than we can ever repay," he said quietly. "Let's make sure we honor that." The trip back to the Eclipse was quiet, the hum of the pods blending with the distant sounds of the alien world fading behind them. When they boarded the ship, the familiar scent of metal and recycled air greeted them like an old friend. Elena immediately went to work, checking the ship's systems to ensure they were ready for the long journey home. Daniel retreated to the lab, already brainstorming ways to integrate the Valith's technology with Earth's failing infrastructure. Rachel stayed on the bridge, staring out at the stars as if searching for answers among the constellations. Lucas joined her after a while, standing silently beside her. "What are you thinking?" he asked gently. She hesitated before responding. "I'm thinking about what comes next," she said. "Earth isn't going to heal overnight. Even with this device, it's going to take years, decades, to undo the damage. And that's assuming people actually work together." He nodded, leaning against the railing. "You're right, but we gotta start. That's more than anyone had before." For the first time in months, maybe even years, Rachel allowed herself to feel a flicker of optimism. "Do you think we can really do it? Save Earth, I mean." Lucas smiled faintly. "We have to believe we can. If we don't, then what was all of this for?" Days turned into weeks as the Eclipse made its way back to Earth. The crew worked tirelessly, preparing for the challenges ahead. They knew the road would be difficult, filled with resistance from those who didn't want to change and skepticism from those who doubted their mission. But they also knew they couldn't give up, not when so much was at stake. When the blue-green orb of Earth finally came into view, the crew gathered on the bridge, their hearts pounding with anticipation. It looked smaller than they remembered, fragile and scared. Yet it was still beautiful, still worth fighting for. "We're home," Lucas said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "Now let's get to work." As the Eclipse descended through Earth's atmosphere, the crew prepared to face whatever awaited them below. They had brought back more than just a device. They had brought back a chance to rebuild, to heal, and to remember what it meant to care for their planet. And for the first time in a long time, they believed it might be enough. The Eclipse touched down in what was once a thriving city, now reduced to ruins. Dust filled the air, and the skeletal remains of buildings stretched toward the gray sky. The crew stepped off the ship, their boots crunching against cracked pavement. It was a sobering sight, but none of them flinched. They had seen worse during their journey, and they were here to change it. Lucas Grayson held the Valith device tightly in his hand, its faint hum a reminder of the power it contained. He glanced at his crew, Rachel Monroe, Elena Martins, and Daniel Hayes, and nodded. "This is it," he said. "We've come full circle." News of their return spread quickly, carried by the few surviving communication networks. People began to gather around the landing site, their faces gaunt but curious. Some looked skeptical, others hopeful, but all were desperate for answers. A man stepped forward from the crowd, his voice hoarse but firm. "What did you bring back?" he asked. "Is it true? Can you save us?" Lucas didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned to Rachel, who activated the orb. Its glow illuminated the dim surroundings, drawing gasps from the crowd. "We found help," she said, her voice steady. "But this isn't just about fixing Earth's problems. It's about fixing ourselves. If we want to survive, we have to work together, and we have to change." The crowd murmured, some nodding while others exchanged worried glances. Elena stepped forward, holding up schematics she had prepared during the journey home. "This device can heal the soil, clean the water, and restore the atmosphere," she explained. "But it won't last unless we stop destroying what we have. We need to build smarter, live cleaner, and take care of each other." Daniel added, "It's not magic. It's science and responsibility. This is our second chance. Don't waste it." As the days passed, the crew worked tirelessly to implement the Valith's technology. They traveled across the planet, deploying the device in areas hit hardest by ecological collapse. Rivers that had been choked with pollutants began to run clear again. Barren fields sprouted green shoots, and the skies, though still hazy, showed hints of blue. For the first time in decades, there was progress. But the real challenge wasn't technical, it was human. Resistance came from unexpected places. Corporations that had profited from Earth's destruction opposed the changes, fearing loss of control. Politicians argued over how to distribute resources fairly, their debates often devolving into chaos. And ordinary people, worn down by years of hardship, struggled to trust that things could truly improve. Through it all, Lucas and his crew remained steadfast. They held town hall meetings, sharing stories of their journey and the lessons they had learned. Rachel became a voice of hope, using the orb to project images of Earth's potential future, a world where humanity lived in harmony with nature. Elena worked with engineers to design sustainable systems, proving that progress didn't have to come at the planet's expense. Daniel collaborated with scientists, teaching them how to replicate and expand the Valith's technology. Slowly, attitudes began to shift. Communities came together to plant trees, clean rivers, and rebuild homes. Children played in parks that hadn't existed for years, their laughter echoing through neighborhoods once filled with despair. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. One evening, as the sun set over a newly restored coastline, Lucas stood beside Rachel, watching the waves crash against the shore. "Do you think we did enough?" he asked quietly. She smiled, her eyes reflecting the golden light of the horizon.